There are cities built on stone, cities built on sand, but New Orleans was built on mud, ghosts, and music, layer by layer, like a spell whispered into the dark. A city of masked parades and second lines where death doesn't end a story, it just changes the rhythm. By day, it's charming, flashing smiles, bright beads, and bowls of gumbo. But by night, the cobblestone tightens, the fog thickens, and something ancient peers through the ironwork. Something watching, waiting, because here, time doesn't move forward. It coils, folds, echoes. In the alleys of the French Quarter, it feels like entering a space that exists between ages, somewhat modern, but somehow coated in the memories and spirits of times past. Tonight, we step off Bourbon Street and into the shadows, into a city that remembers too much. We'll meet the brides who arrived in sealed coffins, the beast that lives where the land turns to water, the killer who murdered to music, and the doll that might have broken more than glass. If you feel a chill as we begin, it's not the air, it's the weight of stories, some true, some twisted, all still breathing. Because in New Orleans, the veil never really closes. It just hangs there, thin, waiting for someone like you to take a closer look. 1. The Casket Girls and the Sealed Convent. In 1728, New Orleans received a shipment unlike any other. A group of young women from France, meant to become brides for the struggling colony, stepped onto the muddy streets carrying long, narrow chests. These filles à la cassette, or casket girls, were pale, wide-eyed, and largely silent. Their luggage, shaped suspiciously like coffins, sparked instant rumor. Were these women refugees or revenants? They were housed at the old Ursuline Convent, one of the oldest surviving buildings in New Orleans, watched over by nuns who had taken strict vows of secrecy. Almost immediately, strange occurrences were whispered about. Men falling ill after courting the new arrivals, a priest found drained of blood in his confessional, and attic windows said to fling open during storms, though no one was ever seen inside. Eventually, the third floor of the convent was sealed shut. Even today, it remains closed to the public, boarded up despite renovations. Officially, it stores church records. Unofficially, it stores fear. Paranormal investigators have tried to access it. Some report violent illness, lost time, or camera malfunctions. Others never return at all. Locals say if you walk by the convent during the full moon, you might hear soft crying or see pale faces in the windows where no one lives. Catholic authorities dismiss it all as superstition, but ask any tour guide in the French Quarter and they'll tell you the convent knows what it's hiding. The Honey Island Swamp Monster. Deep within the cypress-choked wetlands north of New Orleans, locals whisper about a creature that's neither man nor beast. The Honey Island Swamp Monster has been described as over 7 feet tall, covered in coarse gray hair, with piercing amber eyes and webbed 4-toed feet that leave behind tracks unlike any known animal. Witnesses say it moves with eerie silence and smells like death and damp earth. First made famous by Harlan Ford in 1963, who later left behind grainy Super 8 footage of the creature, it has since become one of America's most persistent cryptid legends. But the tale didn't start in the 1960s. Indigenous tribes in the region told stories of Latish, a swamp-dwelling spirit raised by alligators, half human and wholly feared. Later rumors layered in strange origins, like a circus train derailment that allowed chimpanzees to escape and interbreed with local wildlife, creating something monstrous in the dark. Tour guides roll their eyes, but even they admit, hunters go missing, fishermen abandon boats midstream, and sometimes you hear something scream in the swamp, something that isn't supposed to be there. Skeptics chalk it up to misidentification, hoaxes, or overactive imaginations. But those who've stepped deep enough into Honey Island at night often come back, changed. There are cold spots without wind, eyes that reflect where no animals should be, and footprints that sink too deep to fake. The swamp doesn't offer answers, it offers warnings, and the monster, whether spirit or flesh, is one of them. The Vanishing of the Iron Mountain. The Mississippi River is wide, brown, and always moving, carrying with it not just cargo and history, but stories that seem too strange to drown. One such tale began in 1872, when the steamboat Iron Mountain set out toward Pittsburgh. She was towing 6 massive barges filled with sugar, cotton, and livestock, standard freight on a standard trip north. But somewhere along the river, she vanished. Not sank, not crashed, just disappeared. When the barges were later found drifting empty, the ship and her entire crew were gone. No wreckage, no distress calls, no bodies, just an abandoned river corridor and 6 ghostly barges floating downstream like breadcrumbs from a vanished world. In the decades since, the Iron Mountain has become the Flying Dutchman of the Mississippi, a ship swallowed by the river, or perhaps by something older and deeper. River pilots whisper of a dead zone where time slips and compasses spin, where fog rolls in with no warning and the river stops sounding like water and starts sounding like breath. A few claim to have seen a black silhouette pushing upriver in the early morning mist, silent, lightless, and gliding just a little too smooth. But by the time they blink, it's gone. What happened to the Iron Mountain is still officially unsolved. But in New Orleans, where the Mississippi bends like a question mark and secrets collect like silt, people have stopped asking. Because in a city where the dead walk and the past never rests, a vanishing ship almost makes sense.
The Axeman of New Orleans. Between 1918 and 1919, New Orleans froze under the terror of the Axeman. The killer's modus operandi? Remove a plank from the back door, slide inside, and attack with the household's own axe as it lay beside the bed. The victims, Italian immigrant families working in groceries. The city shuddered. No suspect emerged. No motive was identified. Panic flickered through neighborhoods. Then came the letter, printed in the Times-Picayune, written by the Axeman himself. He promised to spare anyone playing jazz on March 19th, calling it the sweetest music this side of heaven. That night, jazz rang out from dozens of parlors. No murders occurred. The message, music as ritual, fear as control. That fusion of jazz culture and murder mythology created a legacy where the city's soundtrack was both a lifeline and a threat, a rhythm still felt in dark alleyways. 5. Annabelle Doll and the Jailbreak. In the spring of 2025, the infamous Annabelle Doll toured New Orleans at an exhibition titled Devils on the Run. Within days, social media lit up with conspiracies, a fire at a historic plantation, and the escape of 10 inmates from Orleans Parish Prison. The timing felt intentional, almost theatrical. Rumors claimed Annabelle's presence triggered panic, chaos, and ghostly pandemonium. Television stations called it urban myth, investigators called it coincidence. Tony Spera, heir to Ed and Lorraine Warren, publicly denied any paranormal link, but fans of the supernatural smelled a pattern. Overnight-themed podcasts recorded spikes in searches for Annabelle plus jailbreak plus ghost. Local voodoo practitioners said the doll's aura carried disruption. Museum security footage, replayed by bloggers, shows shadows moving across her glass case. Was it mischief or malice? The rumor remains a spectral shadow on the city's modern mythology. The Ghost Trader. Thibaut Boudreau, a French trader who arrived in New Orleans in 1727,
was no ordinary merchant. He sold rare herbs, occult charms, and vials containing powders said to bend fate. Rumor says he studied forbidden geometry and practiced hybrid rituals combining European grimoires with indigenous and African spiritual traditions. In 1743, he vanished. Alone in his shop, he scratched his final entry. "I walk backwards through the veil." His ledger dripped with what looked like wine, but smelled of iron. Centuries later, residents along Rue Chartres say on foggy nights they hear a violin's faint echo, an old French melody that ends abruptly in the street. Superstitious locals call it Le Passage de Tib and leave tobacco, red thread, or a pinch of salt near his former shop in case he lingers. He is invoked in backroom rituals of binding. You've walked down cobblestone streets where brides emerged from caskets, heard the rustle in swamp leaves that belies a creature born of primal fear. You've stood outside a convent that remembers screams its walls won't speak. You've danced to jazz in rooms where a killer promised mercy through music, and felt Annabelle's silent scream echo through a prison riot. And finally, you glimpsed the ghost trader, still bargaining in the alleys he haunted. This is not travel guide territory. It's a place where history breathes through every crack, where legends bleed into present moment. New Orleans doesn't just retell its stories, it relives them. Echoing footfalls in the mist, invisible violins playing at midnight, unheard prayers on attic winds. So when you walk through balconies dripping with moss and lantern light thins to dusk, remember, somewhere beneath the river's lull and the quarter's laughter, the past is watching. And sometimes it reaches back.